There's a famous and possibly true story about the boxing champion Muhammad Ali. On an airliner just before takeoff, a stewardess reminded Ali to fasten his seatbelt. The champ replied, "Superman don't need no seatbelt." To which the stewardess shot back, "Superman don't need no airplane either." Welcome back to East and West, a show for helping us keep our spiritual bearings as we navigate this world around us. Our last episode highlighted the power of story and ended with my personal resolve to let God's good story, the kingdom story, be central in the life of my family. However, for every bright noon, there is a dark midnight. For every Christ and Antichrist, for every tree of life, a forbidden tree right beside. In today's episode, I want to look into a particular sort of narrative, the hero narrative offered by the world, meant, I believe, as a sort of artificial hope. Gosh, those superhero movies talk about hope all the time. This is a narrative also meant to provide a pseudo-definition of manhood and masculinity. Now, I'm not against all hero narratives, of course, and it's a very old part of literature, going back to Odysseus and Beowulf and even before that. But even if I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I do think there is some bathwater to be tossed out. By the way, I wrote the original draft of this essay several years ago, but I'm pleased to bring it to you now for its first public release, and I hope you enjoy. A few years ago, I broke my collarbone. I blame capitalism. And not simply because the two-wheeled red rocket that threw me was manufactured by folks trying to make a buck. I mean, by that logic, I might as well blame gravity for slamming me to the ground. One might as well blame the potato peeler for slicing the knuckle. My reasons are a bit more complex, so bear with me on this. Let's back up to a few years before the collarbone incident. In the small, middle Georgia town of Perry, I drove past a closed-down gym. Now, the last group of folks I want to offend are those with big biceps, so as a disclaimer, I like to work out too. No gym membership for me, but several days a week I go to our screen porch and have at it. It's just for cardiovascular maintenance, like eating Cheerios. Yeah, just for cardio, I swear. Anyway, this gym I drove past in Perry was out of business and vacated, but the former owners had never removed their signage, their window decals, and there they still were. Stickers of Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, and probably several other mans that I forget. Now, I hope I don't get kicked out of the secret society of men for divulging classified information, but I think I know why whoever owned that gym chose superhero images for the front display. Somewhere in the shadowy archives of our brains, men want to be superheroes. Of course, we don't come out and say so, not even to ourselves. The sentiment is beyond thought. It's behind it, beneath it. Remember that tragic story of the 4-year-old who jumped out of his 7th-story Brooklyn apartment window? He was trying to fly, like Superman, having just seen this movie a few days before with his dad. Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, deeply moved by this incident, actually made a new episode of The Neighborhood dealing with the issue of superhero play, emphasizing a key point of his overall show, which is the importance of distinguishing between the land of reality and the land of make-believe. And perhaps this distinction only needs emphasis for 4-year-olds. Adults are immune, right? Well, little clues to the contrary keep surfacing. Not even to mention the fact that Avengers movies and the like are often at the tip-top of the box office listings, but there are other more subtle clues besides. Very subtle, no more than a smudgy fingerprint on a candlestick, a hair follicle found at the crime scene. Little things. I mean, even the best covert conspiracy is not without some leaks, and I've spotted several. Those gym windows are, of course, a glaring giveaway, as is the rampant popularity of t-shirts with Superman or Batman or Spider-Man symbols plastered across the chest. But there are also more subtle examples. Exhibit A. Once, waiting in a Harvey's checkout line in Eastman, I flipped through a few magazines displayed along the aisle. I picked up one of those How to Be a Man workout periodicals to see if it offered any good muscle-building ideas. I read a brief article on a chin-up technique. Hands forward on the bar, sets of 5, up fast and then down slow. I'll give that a shot this week, I thought. The interesting part, though, was the article's conclusion, which said this, quote, "Do these chin-ups and soon you'll have to keep your shirt buttoned to hide the S on your chest." Referring, of course, to the Superman S. Aha! A clue. By the way, does anyone know what Superman's S symbol stands for on the planet Krypton? I mean, at least according to the 2013 Man of Steel version. You guessed it. It's the symbol for hope. All right, moving on. Exhibit B. Post-collarbone injury. I attended a supercross race at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. By attended, I don't mean I was on the dirt, but was merely one of the thousands in the stands living vicariously through those guys actually skilled enough or brave or crazy enough to launch themselves into orbit with only 2 wheels and no parachute. Between a set of races, the Jumbotron played a promo video for one of the riders. He was in his living room presenting himself dressed in superhero garb to his wife and kids. First he was Iron Man, then Batman, then Spider-Man, then whatever else man. His family was totally unimpressed. He sulked out of the room, dejected, but finally came back for one last try. This time he was dressed in full motocross gear. The family went wild. Exhibit B, Your Honor. Exhibit B. Perhaps I should clarify something that might not be common knowledge to the uninitiated. Motocross folks love their gear. There's a saying that football is 80% mental and 40% physical. I'm not exactly sure how motocross slices the pie chart, but I would guess, in all seriousness, it's 30% skill, 30% machinery, and 40% fashion. Hey, at least they got their math right. But the 40% fashion is what interests me, which brings us to yet another clue, Exhibit C. Once, while shopping online for a new chest protector, that's a bit of dirt bike equipment meant to keep at least some of your ribs intact when you smack into a tree, I came across an article that said of its advertised equipment, "And it looks great. You'll feel like a superhero flying through the woods." Aha! At this point, I would say the DA has enough to make a case. But for one last example, more comical and more recent, I will share here the audio from a new Geico motorcycle insurance commercial. It totally captures the transformative mythology of motorcycles. You would get this more clearly if you had the visuals and not just the audio, but oh well. The idea is that Renee, a typical middle-class woman, is transformed into Rebel Renee, a night-riding heroic adventurer, when she puts on her motorcycle gear and hops onto her bike. The classic Geico humor is here too, though of course it gets a bit lost without having the visuals like we don't have here in the podcast. But as an example, when it mentions Rebel Renee greasing a few palms, what she's doing, if you could see it, is paying off the guy at the county fair's game booth for one of the big stuffed animals so she can give it to her kids. It's hilarious, really. Geico always is. But anyway, here we go.
Meet Renee, bank manager and mom of the year. But when she gets on her bike, she becomes Rebel Renee. Rebel Renee is the most outspoken member of her book club. And she didn't even read the book. It's rumored she once used her phone at trivia night.
Cleveland.
And she isn't above greasing some palms to get things done. And Rebel Renee rides with Geico because savings and great service are 2 things she'd never rebel against. Geico, savings and service for both your sides.
If you could see the commercial, you would notice immediately my whole point, that the most marked transformation is due not so much to Renee's bike, but to the gear that the bike requires, or let's say allows her to wear. That's where it happens. The trolley ride to the land of make-believe is catalyzed by the gear. And hey, gear is good as far as it goes. I do wish I'd been wearing better gear as I flew through those Greene County trails the day I broke my collarbone. It would have saved me thousands in follow-up medical bills, but the real appeal of motocross apparel is not strictly pragmatic, not strictly practical. If it were, why would that chest protector ad have said anything about aesthetics and appearance? Or why would the Lady Renee ad have said nothing at all about safety, and this on an insurance commercial. Look, if some men pump iron because a subconscious part of them wants to feel like a superhero, and I'm talking about other men now, I only work out for cardio benefits, cardio I say, then some other men might also want to dress up, to wear certain garb for the same reason. Now, let's inventory the options available to a dude who wants to dress as a hero. There is, of course, Halloween. That's one way, though with a bit of an age ceiling. College frats often have dress-up themed socials, so that's an option. High schools, of course, always have Superhero Day during homecoming week. And for older folks, there's Atlanta's Dragon Con. For more on this little subculture, get on Wikipedia and check out cosplay, C-O-S-P-L-A-Y. That's a term coined in Japan. Ultimately, though, the shortcoming of all these options is that they involve merely playing dress-up. They are, by definition, pretend. And the quest is for something real. Spider-Man doesn't don his Spidey suit so he can go to a masquerade party. He puts it on so he can go on adventures, save the day. And now we're getting more to the real point. To quote John Eldredge, the Christian author of a book entitled Wild at Heart, he writes, "Deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue." Let me read that again. Deep in his heart, every man longs for a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. I get that. I really do. To go a bit further, here's the synopsis of Eldredge's book as posted on thriftbooks.com. God designed men to be dangerous. Simply look at the dreams and desires written in the heart of every boy, to be a hero, to be a warrior, to live a life of adventure and risk. Sadly, most men abandon those dreams and desires, aided by a Christianity that feels like nothing more than pressure to be a nice guy. It is no wonder that many men avoid church, and those who go are often passive and bored to death. In this provocative book, referring to Eldredge's book, Wild at Heart, so in this provocative book, Eldredge gives women a look inside the true heart of a man and gives men permission to be what God designed them to be: dangerous, passionate, alive, and free. And that's the end of the synopsis. Y'all, that's true words. I mean, how many boys hear endless lessons of safety from their parents and teachers? Don't go there, don't do that, don't touch that, etc., but never once do they hear a word about courage. Frankly, we're well equipping our upcoming men to arrive to their graves safe and sound. I believe Eldredge is onto an important point about men and manliness, and what he's onto is not at all fulfillable at a costume or a cosplay or whatever party. However, if there is one avenue, just one that fits the bill, that meets the legitimate desire to adventure and rescue, and also the illegitimate desire to dress like a superhero, it's motocross. You got the hero, his suit, his bike, even his risk-taking and danger-braving. It's all there, and all for a low monthly payment. Now, at this point, I'm going to venture into a bit more of the conspiracy theorist mode. Try to keep up. Remember where that term cosplay was coined? Japan. Interesting. And get this, the motocross bikes, they're from Japan. Okay, not technically all, but essentially all. Japan is the dominant force in dirt bike production. The red Honda that threw me in Greene County, made in Japan. The green Kawasaki's, Japan. The blue Yamahas, Japan. The yellow Suzuki's, Japan. And wait a sec, these colors sure sound familiar. Red, green, blue, yellow. Ah, yes, I've got it. Power Rangers. A clue. Hey, I remember playing at Power Rangers as a kid. I even recall fashioning a low-budget homemade outfit. I mean, what guy doesn't want to be a ninja? I scraped that green magic marker up and down my white socks, hoping to make the diamond-shaped emblems of the Power Ranger boots. Back in those days, my two favorites were the Green Ranger and the Blue Ranger. Surely it is coincidental, purely coincidental, that my favorite Mortal Kombat ninjas were Reptile, that's green, and Sub-Zero, that's blue. And coincidence, mere coincidence, that to this day my favorite dirt bikes are Kawasaki's, green, and Yamaha, blue, and also Honda red, like the Red Ranger, Green Ranger, Blue Ranger, Red Ranger, I'm sure it's coincidental that Toei Animation, TOEI, the Japanese company that produced Super Sentai, which is the Power Rangers, purely coincidental that Toei favors these colors. Yes, and merely circumstantial, I say, that Toei never sprung for an orange Ranger. Orange, by the way, is the color of the motorcycle company KTM, one of the few competitive dirt bike manufacturers not hailing from Japan. Indeed. Speaking of Toei Animation, it gets better. They have a few other shows in their archives that deserve a mention here. There's Kamen Rider, which is also called Masked Rider. That's a ninja-clad hero who rides around on his motorcycle, of course. Also, and this one's going to blow your mind, there's, I hope I pronounce it right, Suppuede Man, which is Toei's 1970s version of Spider-Man. Takuya Yamashiro is the Peter Parker equivalent of that series. He's the guy who transforms into the red-webbed hero that we all recognize. Any guesses what Mr. Yamashiro was in his civilian career? That is, before his call to be the web-slinging wonder? What was his day job or his occupation before that? Yep, you guessed it. He was a dirt bike racer. Now let me pause and clarify something for the uninitiate, that is, females. Your men don't consciously think of this when they're at the power sports dealership. There's no overt, okay, I want to be a ninja, so let me buy this bike and this gear. None of that. The influence is totally in the silent backdrops of the brain. It's something like those old conspiratorial legends of subliminal advertising, which turns out there's actually some truth to that. You know, play the song backwards and you'll hear, drink Ovaltine, drink Ovaltine, drink Ovaltine, or something like that. There's nothing conscious about it. It's beneath the conscience or behind it or something. Even still, I'm suddenly craving some flavored milk.
90 seconds later, I'm in the only room in the house where a boy of 9 could sit in privacy and decode. Aha, B. I went to the next. E. The first word is B. S. It was coming easier now. U. 25. That's R.
I'll be right there, Ma. Gee whiz.
G. Oh, be sure to. Be sure to what? What was little orphan Annie trying to say? Be sure to what?
Annie has got to go. Will you please come out? All right, Ma. I'll be right out.
I was getting closer now. The tension was terrible. What was it? The fate of the planet may hang in the balance.
No, Annie's got to go. I'll be right out. For crying out loud.
Gee, almost there. My fingers flew. My mind was a steel trap. Every pore vibrated. It was almost clear. Yes, 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 yes.
Be sure to drink your Ovaltine. Ovaltine? A crummy commercial?
Marketing, marketeering, consumerism, all the inevitable offspring of capitalism. I suppose there's no helping it. I mean, the main vice of socialism is that the government forces the money out of your pockets. Whereas the main vice of capitalism is that the marketeers convince you to remove the money yourself. And man, it's subtle. Do I imagine secret meetings held in tall executive suites in Tokyo where Mr. Kawasaki shakes hands with Mr. Green Ranger as they agree on the color seed to be planted in consumers' minds at a young age and harvested years later in the form of an overseas loan signed in the lobby of a Kawasaki dealership? Hard to say. But such corporate coordination is not without precedent. I would be very surprised if Chrysler did not, in some way, pay Twister, that 1996 movie, to get the Dodge Ram such a starring role in the film. Or Ford, in Tremors 3, that's 2001 film, Or the canned spinach folks with Popeye the Sailor Man. I mean, come on. Advertising, as far as I can tell, knows no limits. The Man of Steel drank Budweiser in 2013, just as Jerry Seinfeld drank Yoo-Hoo in 1992. But for the clearest example of marketeering, and particularly marketable heroism, look no further than Walmart, where Spider-Man crawls over every toothbrush and toddler bed, and Batman clings to every backpack and basketball. Whether the scheme is larger than mere branding, I don't know. The psychological influence of commercialized heroes may be happening independently of any careful conspiratorial planning, human planning at least. To quote a Ray McKinnon film, if a man builds a machine and that machine conspires with another machine built by another man, are those men conspiring? Look, conspiracy or coincidence, deliberateness or randomness, I don't suppose it really matters. And certainly Japan is no more guilty than anyone else, I mean the US, for instance, of frighteningly strategic marketing. But all finger-pointing aside, what interests me here is the undeniable and impressive choreography that is observable in the whole show. It's like that surreal, I'm being watched feeling that you get when you so much as think about buying a new washing machine and suddenly every pop-up ad on your internet browser is from Maytag, Whirlpool, General Electric. How do they know? I hear it's something to do with cookies, but hey, I'm on a diet. I work out, remember? For cardio. Purely for cardio, I say. Anyway, my broken clavicle reminded me, just like so many motorcycle wrecks have reminded so many, that I am no man of steel. Humans, whatever else can be said of us, spend our lives in frail, easily fragmented jars of clay. Is it bad, then, for a man to want to be a hero? Surely there are worse ambitions. Better his subconscious mind lure him to be a Peter Parker or a Clark Kent than a Hannibal Lecter or a coward. For men to stand up and be men, I would never speak against that. Our society wants and needs better men. But of this strange, commercialized version of manhood, masculinity, heroism, I'm distrustful. George MacDonald says it best in his novel Phantastes from the 19th century. And please, my listeners, really tune in to this one line. Quote, I learned that he that will be a hero will barely be a man. That he who will be nothing but a doer of his work is sure of his manhood. That's good stuff. A doer of work and a doer of duty, those dry drudge boulders to be rolled up the daily hills. Hey, these are certainly a far cry from the young man who, through no particular skill or effort or dedication of his own, is bitten by a spider and suddenly has it all. To hit the target of manhood, real, actual manhood, we need a less muddied, less commercialized picture of what it is we're aiming at. A picture drawn by someone other than those trying to empty our pockets. To my listening men, who is drawing your picture? Who is shaping your vision on manliness? I hope you enjoyed this episode of East and West, where I think we've sufficiently exposed the evils of advertising. And on that note, you should all buy my debut novel, Reaching Soul, available for only $15 on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksAMillion.com, and WesYoungWriter.com. This is a paid ad by Wes Young and Wes Young affiliates. No motorcyclists were harmed during the making of this advertisement. Okay, I couldn't resist that joke. But in all seriousness, Reaching Soul is a fresh look, a real and accurate look at what manhood and manliness can be. And it's hopefully a thrilling ride of a story in its own right. Give it a read if you like. And as to all this talk about superheroes, I really hesitated to even make this episode for a couple of reasons. One, I can't make and am not making any sort of blanket statement about it. Should you shield your eyes from these things or shield your kids from these things? Well, it depends. Think about idolatry in general. To some, it's just the moon, this beautiful thing that comes up at night, and we can look at it and say, that's beautiful. To others, it's the moon god. To some, it's just a statue of a cow, shiny and gold and neat looking. To others, that is the Israelites in the desert under Moses and Aaron, it is a god. Blanket statements don't seem to work with idolatry. To some, just a statue. To some, something more. All I can say is be wary, be on the lookout, and be prayerful about the whole business. Our culture is steeped in these narratives, and you need look no further than the box office to know that. And I'm not as openly trustful of them as most people seem to be. There is, it seems, a strong enchantment to them. Beyond saying that, I'll go no further. And so we conclude episode 5 of season 5. Until next time, I hope that you'll all pray on and press on, one day at a time.